Probably my favorite game of the series. Winning in 6, the Toronto Raptors got it done, but there's so much to take away from it. The first thing that jumps off my head is how unfair is this for the Golden State Warriors? The injuries just mounted over and over and over and over again. Klay Thompson goes down with the ACL injury, as we all saw. He heroically, in some people's minds, came back and shot the free throws because we all thought maybe it was just a sprain and he'll be back and can be a savior for this Warriors. Because let's be honest, for the last couple of games, Klay Thompson was probably the best player on the court. The continued platitude you have to throw at Masai Ujiri for getting this thing done the way that he got it done. He parted ways with one of the most popular Raptors over the last 10 years or so, and DeMar DeRozan sending him down to San Antonio to get Kawhi Leonard and also Danny Green, but it was the other things as well. It was the drafting of Pascal Siakam at the 27th pick. It was bringing in Fred VanVleet as a free agent, developing them in the G League. They became two enormous contributors for this game. But the two things that ultimately stand out for me, one has to do with Kawhi, and one has to do with the Golden State Warriors dynasty. Now, I know this isn't going to happen, but I think Kawhi should think about this. He owes it to stay, to the fans, to the game, to history, to try to repeat with the Toronto Raptors. Now, we know this is likely not going to happen. There's many reasons and examples of why he's not, things that he has said, because he's never said that he plans on being here. He's never had in any of his press conferences or any of his rhetoric. I don't know if he does social media, but none of that has given any indication that he's going to stay. He made history. He brought Canada and the Toronto Raptors their first ever championship, and I worry that it's not going to get overlooked because it was so amazing to knock off the Golden State Warriors in the way that it did. And yeah, the injuries and the circumstances of them winning this NBA Finals, might get lost a little bit in history. But the Toronto Raptors had never been here before, and they are here. And Kawhi Leonard, at least the Raptors fans, owe him a debt of gratitude for helping elevate them to the level of winning an NBA championship. He also did, and we don't have the sound on this, but he did an interview with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN right after the show. We always see Scott. He does the late show, so all these games that end late, he's always there interviewing the people that are involved in these sporting events that are late. And he kept saying us. Instead of saying us, he kept saying them. I did this for them. It's most satisfying for them. I wanted to come and help build this for them, which it feels dispersonal and disconcerting. But, I mean, the last time that you can remember a one-off in the NBA Finals, a champion, is probably the Dallas Mavericks. This was back when LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh were had created the super team down in Miami. And the Dallas Mavericks surprised them, quite frankly, and beat them. And while we reference that sometimes, it doesn't have the same appeal as a team that competed year over year over year and started to create a dynasty. Now, what is a dynasty in today's NBA or today's sporting landscape, the Patriots notwithstanding? A dynasty is probably 3 or 4 years of getting to the finals and being right there at the finish and winning one or two, probably two, at least two championships. If you don't have that, you tend to forget it. You tend to overlook it. And so when I look at Kawhi and I think about Kawhi's decision-making, and I know he's not going to do this because his focus is elsewhere. I think he owes it to the Raptors fans. He owes it to us to see if they can do it again. And it's hard and it's not an easy decision. But if he doesn't love being in Toronto and he's just looking at this as a mercenary type of assignment for a year, I get it. But I feel like I'll miss out on something. We'll miss out on something if Kawhi decides to go elsewhere and start over, whether that's with the Clippers or it's likely to be with the Clippers, and try to do it there. It just will feel a little bit empty to me if Kawhi decides to leave and not stay and defend, because it's unprecedented. You don't see this. You don't see a superstar win a championship in one place and then bounce the next year. These circumstances were unique, obviously. Masai Ujiri knew that this was what could potentially happen, and it likely will happen. Hell, Masai Ujiri might be out the door, especially if this report from Woj, which happened as Masai Ujiri was standing on the podium doing the post-game interview. He released this report that the Washington Wizards will do about anything to get Masai Ujiri to come be their general manager and maybe even offer him up to $10 million a year. So, I mean, the whole thing could fall apart if Masai Ujiri decides to go to greener, and I mean that money, greener by money, pastures to Washington. But I truly feel, and I wish that this would happen, that Kawhi would stay in Toronto and defend this championship. The problem is that I don't think he will, and that 1 year great feeling that the Toronto Raptors and their fans have will fade away. Probably not too soon, because I think they'll take it even if he does leave. The other takeaway that I had from this game is that the Warriors dynasty is coming to an end. We know it's coming to an end. You can just look at it. Especially with all of the rhetoric and the noise that has surrounded Kevin Durant for most of this season and what he's going to do in free agency if he decides to opt out of his contract. And that's a conversation we'll also have later. Should he opt out of his contract? I mean, seriously, you're going to pay a guy max money to sit on the sideline for a year if you're the New York Knicks or one of these other teams? Maybe. It sounds like bad business, but you're probably going to do it. But the Warriors dynasty feels like it's over. It feels like the innovation that they had spent so many years in developing, the ability to develop shooters and have shooters who could knock down shots, this unselfishness and ball movement. I mean, it was if they didn't have 30-plus assists a night, it was a bad day. The reliance, the heavy reliance on the three-point shot. Teams have started to not only catch up, but the Golden State Warriors have just gotten old. Andre Iguodala, his 22 points notwithstanding last night, he just felt old for a lot of this series. Draymond Green even, he has to pick his spots, and his 8 turnovers last night were a big reason that the Golden State Warriors couldn't sustain a lead as the game came down the stretch. They fought last night. They really did. It wasn't like the Toronto Raptors ran away with this championship. The Golden State Warriors fought. They showed their mettle, but it was almost impossible to do so once Klay Thompson got hurt. And to me, Klay Thompson was the best player on the court for both sides last night. His ability to take shots and create shots and develop and keep this Golden State Warriors team alive and viable, especially after Kyle Lowry's quick start. What do you have, 11 points in the first? He had the first 11 points of the game. I think it was 11-2. Kyle Lowry to the Golden State Warriors. But Klay Thompson was the man. Klay Thompson played through a pulled hamstring or a strained hamstring. After sitting out Game 3, he came back and was amazing. The Game 5 that they won was primarily because of him and Steph Curry knocking down a lot of three-pointers. And that brings me back to the first thing I thought. This is just so unfair to the Golden State Warriors. After everything that they've done, the dynasty that it created, whether you loved them or you hated them, it was unfair for them to have to play this Toronto Raptors team, which felt like a team of fate with everything that went right for them, from the offseason maneuverings of Ujiri to Kawhi's health and impact on this team. He lifted these guys in a way that we didn't think we'd ever see in Toronto. They were the team that was always the bridesmaid. They never could get past the hump, and here they are winning their first ever NBA championship, but they did it against a very compromised Warriors team. This Warriors team, though, this dynasty is over, and a lot of it is on Steph. And it's not Steph's fault, and I want to put him in that upper echelon of superstars because he is a transcendent shooter. but the Warriors dynasty is done, and a lot of it has to do with their best shooter.